Hello again from my front porch. I have been seeing a lot of use of the phrase freedom of speech. It's all over social media, it's all over the news, it seems to be everywhere. And of course, the reason it's everywhere is because of things like Donald Trump and his court cases being issued gag orders, and his defenders saying, yeah, you can't do that to him. He's got freedom of speech. The Kansas City Chiefs kicker, Harrison Butker, making his speech to the private Catholic school and making statements based off the belief system that he and the others there all shared, but those comments then being shared outside of that venue, and people wanting to say, shut him down, shut him down, shut him down. Other, yay, good job. Some saying, no, 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 shut him down, shut him down. And people defending him by saying he can say whatever he wants. He has freedom of speech. And all of these, and even when you think about that, there have been individuals who have been banned or censored on social media, Facebook, Twitter, now called X, and all these things. They say, you can't do that. I have freedom of speech. Okay. This is not going to be a First Amendment lesson, although I keep saying that I should do a series of these on the first 10 amendments to the Constitution that we call the Bill of Rights. And I think I still will do that. I think I will indeed do that. I think that would be a good activity. But that is not what I'm going to do right now. I'm merely mentioning that the phrase freedom of speech and the concept comes from that First Amendment to the U.S. Constitution that says Congress shall make no laws respecting, and it lists out some things, and one of them is freedom of speech. Well, in the strictest sense, freedom of speech in the Constitution is a statement that only applies to legislation and regulation done by the federal government, because that is what the Constitution does. It defines and puts parameter around the federal government. And the First Amendment even says Congress shall make no law respecting and freedom of speech or limiting freedom of speech in the First Amendment. So it's a very important part. It's a very important passage. But in the strictest sense, what it's saying is the federal government shall not infringe on an individual's freedom of speech. Now, just little snippet. Again, I'm trying real hard to not unpack the whole First Amendment thing, but constitutionally, there are people who would like to think that our rights are government granted, and that our right to a freedom of speech comes from the First Amendment. That's not actually true. And the truth is that the founders who drafted those documents and put those things in place, they believed that we had freedom of speech as a right inherent simply by being born, by simply being alive. We had the right to free speech. And so then what they're saying in that passage in the First Amendment is Congress, this new federal government they were creating, Congress shall make no law respecting or limiting the freedom of speech, so that it's a prohibition, a restriction on the government that it cannot limit our freedom of speech. So that becomes a real interesting concept there, especially when you consider that there are various times where limiting free speech is a good thing. Like the classic example, you can't walk into a movie theater and yell fire, or a crowded venue or something, and yell fire and cause a panic and cause people to get injured trying to scramble and get out. You will get arrested for that. Well, but I had free speech. No, not so much. No. You can't post online death threats about the president, about how you're going to do this or that to the president and injure and hurt, without having the Secret Service show up at your door. Well, wait, I thought I had freedom of speech. Okay. And even the examples I cited earlier, Harrison Butker getting pushback on his comments, Donald Trump being told he's getting gag ordered by the judge in the court cases because of the things he says, and others who have been censored or blocked, and they say, no, you can't do it. So let's pause for a moment. Not only does freedom of speech, as it often gets used, refer to government restricting and trying to protect freedom of speech from government intrusion, but it also only protects the use of the freedom of speech, meaning it says you can say what you want to say, but that's where the protection ends. See, there are a lot of people who want to say that, well, because I have freedom of speech, that means I also am protected from whatever fallout happens based on what I've said. That is not at all what freedom of speech is. There is no such guarantee. Freedom of speech simply says you should have the right to say what you want to say, what's inside you, what you want to. Does not say that you won't face repercussion based on what you do. So again, if you go into a crowded facility and you yell fire and you cause people to panic and to trample, and you're going to be held accountable for that. You are going to legally be punished for doing that. Were you able to stand up and say it? Yeah, nobody muzzled you while you were saying it, but you caused problem. Now that's an extreme example. But in these other scenarios we talked about, let's use Harrison Buttiker as a good example. Now, the reality is there's nothing he said was wrong when you consider the context. He was proclaiming his personal religious-based views to a graduation ceremony at a private Catholic school full of people who shared the same religious views. It really was a glorified church service, and it would be like a layperson, anybody, not because Buttiker's not a minister, so it'd be like a layperson in a church getting up and making some comments at the pulpit as they're getting ready to take the offering or doing whatever. It's same basic premise, same basic principle, and we don't go after people and try to get them fired and all this kind of stuff when in those situations, but people went after him, and that's because they took what he said in that context and they tried to apply it in a much broader context than what he was delivering it in. And in fact, I've seen his full comments, and I know that while the main thing that seems to have everybody riled up about it is that he said, hey, ladies here, those of you that are excited to become a stay-at-home mom, a homemaker, you don't need to feel bad about that. You don't need to feel, society has tried to tell you that something's wrong with you, that you're making a bad choice, but I'm here to tell you that I don't believe that. I think it's great. If that's what you're choosing, that's fair. He spent a lot of time dealing with it, but that was what he was saying. You read the comments and or even better, listen to him say them. You totally understand that's what he's trying to say. But even before he said all of that, he started by saying, and I know many of you ladies are going to be, I'm not quoting exactly, I don't have it written out here, but that many of you ladies are going to pursue a career, and that's fine. That's good. That's great. Whatever. At no point did he disparage women who wanted to pursue a career. In fact, he acknowledged them first. That was like, but then he chose to spend his time trying to encourage and bolster the women that were going to choose to not go for a career path by trying to let them know something is not wrong with you because you're wanting to do this. It's okay. That's what he was trying to say. Personally, I don't have a problem with him saying that. Now, if he just stood up there and said, I believe every woman should skip a career and should stay home, I'd have a problem with that, and it would be understandable. But that is not what he said. However, it doesn't ultimately matter what he said because he had full freedom of speech to say whatever, and he used it. But freedom of speech does not protect from the fallout, from reaping what you've sown. And so, because his comments clearly triggered some folks and touched some sensitive nerves, they continue to show up in social media as people are attacking him. Now, the attacks come from frankly a basis of ignorance, where they're trying to imply that his comments were directed at every woman everywhere, and that was absolutely not the case. That just simply is not true. That is an inaccurate depiction of what he said. However, here's the interesting part. He had the freedom of speech to be able to say what he said, and his critics also have freedom of speech. There's nothing in the concept of freedom of speech that says what you're saying has to be accurate or true. Just that you have a right to express it. Now, if Harrison Buttiker makes his comments and it gets this person over here upset, he uses freedom of speech to say his part. This person uses their freedom of speech and they tell bald-faced lies. Then it's possible that somebody else is going to come in here and go, hey, you're an idiot. You're a moron. You're stupid. How come you're making that stuff up? And there's going to be this conflict, this friction. And this person who made the comments about Buttiker, they can say, hey, I have freedom of speech to say whatever I want to say. That is true. But just like with what Buttiker said, he can say it, but he's still got to reap the repercussions of that. The thing this person said, they're going to get some slings and arrows thrown at them, and their freedom of speech does not protect them from that. Freedom of speech is not some Kevlar vest that protects you from the projectiles that are sent back your way when you speak up. It is because of this fact that even though we all have freedom of speech, so very many people stay quiet today. Think about that. A lot of people, perhaps even some of you watching, have some pretty strong opinions about some things. You see stuff on the news, you read stuff online, and you just think, what in the world? What? No, that's right. But you don't say nothing. You say nothing. You keep your lips zipped. Why? Because you are afraid of the repercussions. You're afraid that if you were to imagine if you were to stand up and say, you know what? I don't think Donald Trump is really all that bad. Oh, wow. Now, you didn't say you liked him. You didn't say he's a good guy. You didn't even say you're voting for him. You just questioned, was he really the Antichrist, that the devil incarnate that his critics have cast him to be? Just by saying, maybe he's not really all that bad. You will be pummeled if you say that. I'm not recommending that you say that unless you're ready to receive what that happens. Likewise, if you stand up and say, well, I'm worried about Joe Biden. I think the man has dementia. The man's a human puppet. Some other people are elderly abusing him and pulling his strings or just trotting him out there. And there's something really sitting. Not only will you be classified a conspiracy theorist, but you will receive all kinds of vitriol from the Biden supporters. You have total freedom to say it. Absolute freedom of speech to say what you think, but you will receive response to that. Now, of course, I've used a couple of political examples, which granted, there is no political position anybody can take that everybody will agree with you on. There is not a single political position that everybody can agree on. So that's just the way it is. Freedom of speech is not about agreement. Freedom of speech is not about winning the argument. Freedom of speech is not about being immune from whatever fallout or from whatever, you drop a rock in the middle of a body of water and there's all the ripples that go out. Well, that's like what happens when you employ your freedom of speech. Now you're going to create all these ripples that go out, but it's possible that some of those ripples are going to cause a problem. They'll come back and bite you. And when that happens, you got no real room to complain. Now, you may not like it, and I'm not saying it's a good thing. Well, the stuff that would happen to you that would be negative. What I'm saying is, freedom of speech doesn't protect you from whatever comes back because of what you said. Now, I would like to think that if you use your freedom of speech and say something positive, something uplifting, something edifying, that you will also reap from that, but it will be positive things that you would reap. I mean, it's worth a try. It's a lot better than planting seeds, using your freedom of speech to plant negative seed out there, because then you definitely will reap negative things. So, just use it wisely. But here's my challenge. Two things. Number one, please do not, if you're involved in discussion on social media, do not try to claim that you are able to say, or somebody else is able to say and do whatever they want without repercussion because of freedom of speech, because that is not what freedom of speech is. But number two, don't be afraid. Now, be thoughtful, be strategic, be intelligent about what it is that you're going to say, how you're going to use it. Don't just be firing off. There are plenty of people out there, shock jocks and others, and these political pundits and sports commentators and all, who fire off stuff left and right, and they're doing it to draw attention. They're doing it so that you will tune into their shows or click on their websites and all that kind of stuff. That's all just hook, trying to hook in. When you use your freedom of speech and you stand up and you put yourself out there, do it for a reason that matters. Because that way, even if you do, and you probably will, receive some repercussion to that you may not like, if you've used it for reasons that are important to you, for reasons that matter to you, for reasons that mean something deep inside, well, getting a few stones thrown back your way may not be such a bad thing, because you know you've done the right thing by speaking your mind. Keep that in mind as we are now entering into the nastiest part of the political season. It's going to get ugly. It's going to get bloody. I'm not suggesting you throw yourself into the middle of it, but don't cower in the corner either. You do have a right to free speech. Just use it wisely and use it in ways that you can be okay with whatever blowback comes at you. All right, that's it. Enough about the real freedom of speech. And yeah, I think I'm going to put together a series on the 10 Amendments. Actually, I was having a conversation with somebody the other day that couldn't even list them. And a smart person. But he joked and he started trying to name off, and he was like, and I think this one is that the 5th, or is that the 7th, or is that, okay, let's just, and we just pause and we just work through them. I think that'd be fun. I think it'd be fun, but that's me. Anyway, all right, prattled on long enough. I'll see y'all next time from my front porch.